What is up, fantasy people? Welcome into a special edition of the True North Fantasy Podcast. As you can see, Ty and I are not in our regular settings, but that is okay because today we have an incredible announcement. It is here, Ty, in the words of the great Bruce Buffer, it's time. So we are here. The launch of the Fantasy Points Media Group has happened, Ty, and I don't know about you, but I am thrilled.
No, I am beyond excited. And I think, a lot of these get thrown around in the fantasy universe, people signing with people, whatever, people joining with people. And what I really have, a strong feeling about is that it's no better feeling than believing in what you're attaching yourself to. And that's what I think is really cool about this. I mean, you go down the list of who is employed by Fantasy Points. You're talking Graham Barfield, Scott Barrett, John Hansen, Adam Kaplan, Joe Dolan, one of the most accurate rankers in fantasy football, Tom Brawley, who is somebody I've sworn by for betting since going back to Fantasy Guru days, which a lot of these dudes are from. And then you have guys like Greg Cosell, our boy Edwin Porras, who's been on the pod before. So that's definitely my big takeaway is being able to associate yourself with some of those names is still surreal.
Yeah, absolutely, man. It's been a really cool build up, and it's been tough to keep the news in because we've had this in our back pocket for a little bit. Essentially, just to give any listeners right now the premise of the media group, Fantasy Points. Ty mentioned all the names there. Fantasy Points is a group of legends in the industry, and they wanted to create a group of podcasts that they could help with exposure, and we would in turn obviously promote the Fantasy Points product, which is incredible. And here we are. So some of the other brands that are involved are True North's own The Smoke Show, hosted by Josh Smoky Hell Nelson. P2W Fantasy, that's Play to Win. Nick Script over there. We had him on the show just a few weeks ago, and he is incredible. Tyler Gunther and the team at Dynasty Happy Hour, we've had them on as well, and they're going to be a great addition too. And then a couple of the Fantasy Points members. You mentioned Edwin Porras at FB Injury Doc. He has the Injury Prone podcast. He's a part of the media group. And a cool little wrinkle is Dan Serbia, the resident card expert at Fantasy Points, is going to be bringing his card podcast. So I think it might be called Cardboard Kings, but hope I'm not letting any cats out of the bag for Dan here. But a great group of people. We've been in the Slack chat. It's been fantastic. Ty, why don't you take a sec just to talk a little bit about what's offered on the Fantasy Points website?
Oh my God, yeah, and we'll have lots of time to kind of go through that, but there is some not only like proprietary data that you want from Fantasy Points, but it's some of the stuff that I swear by, like yards created from Graham Barfield going back to 2016. There is not a rookie running back class that I've formed an opinion on one player without reading their yards created profile from Graham Barfield. Just a fantastic tool for evaluating these rookie running backs. And also on the site now, they have like a database set up, Trav, if you didn't know, where you can see it all, and probably just an excuse for Graham to go into a quiet room and look at Joe Mixon's stats. But there really is an endless plethora of stuff that you want at your disposal on Fantasy Points, like projections done by some of the best people in the industry, DFS galore. Like that is the big selling point for a lot of these sites, I think. And their DFS packages is second to none. Slate breakdowns, projected ownership, you name it. And, I hinted at the Tom Brawley stuff, like the odds board is really awesome. So everything betting that you want as kind of prop bets explode and everything in this industry, I think Fantasy Points is going to be the place to go. It's always been the place I go for futures, draft props coming up. And in season, you get game picks, trends, player props from John Hansen and all that. And there's super useful like cheat sheets on this site for things that people might be less familiar with, whether it's best ball or auction leagues. They even have like an Excel based tool for auction leagues. And for best ball, if you know, but if you don't, just Google Fantasy Points best ball primer, basically a best ball Bible penned by Scott Barrett, one of my faves. So there's just so much that we're going to get into. We'll definitely be using a lot of things from Fantasy Points, incorporating it into our shows, into our program. But yeah, I'm just really excited to head up towards the draft here with Fantasy Points at our disposal and being able to use some of like Greg Cosell's draft guide information. And, Scott Barrett actually came onto my radar a few years ago because he was somebody who was going through all the post-draft press conferences, which, I always won't shut up about. And so it's really nice to not have to go to each USA Today site or go listen to all these press conferences, because Scott's just doing that work for us. And, I could go on and forever about the stats, because I think that's another big selling point of what Fantasy Points offers is, a lot of these sites out there have advanced metrics, and a lot of them are very expensive. Fantasy Points, I think, really finds that perfect balance of the two. Like, you're going to find almost every advanced metric you're looking for on fantasypoints.com, even some that I haven't seen in other places that are actually ones that I've had in my personal created databases. So not having to download tables and put in a bunch of formulas has been really nice too. But you can look at everything from stats in the red zone. Like, you can see anything from which quarterback had the most fantasy points in the red zone last year, which was Cam Newton by far, or which tight end did, which was, Travis Kelce, I would imagine, by far. But if you look down, I think number 2 was Jonnu Smith. So Bill Belichick must have a fantasy point subscription, Trav. So endless things like that. And we'll definitely get into a lot of the stuff that Fantasy Points offers, especially when we get in season, because a lot of the resources that I used when we put together the spot during the regular season were stats that I grabbed off of Fantasy Points, like Fantasy Points Allowed, just in a great sortable, distributable fashion. And then it's really just an all-in-one stop. I think that would be the best sell for Fantasy Points, not to mention having literally a dozen of the best analysts in the industry in one place.
Absolutely, man. I think that's really well put. And I'm glad you took that one over, because as everyone knows, you are the True North research demon. And I know that you've been digging on those databases and all the stuff over at Fantasy Points quite a bit. You touched real quick, and Ty, we do have a guest tonight. Anybody who's watching, we have tonight. I say tonight, I'm in podcast mode, but it's actually afternoon. I'm on my lunch break. We do have a guest joining us, and I'm really stoked to get him in here. But I do want to mention, Ty, you talked about the draft guide. Just real quick, anybody who's checking this out right now, the draft guide launches tomorrow. So the Fantasy Points draft guide is coming out. With that, you will get, I think the meat and potatoes, which is really, really incredible, are the player profilers from Greg Cosell. So he is just like, he's like a patriarch in the industry, essentially. He's a god among men, essentially. And you get all of his player profiles currently on the Fantasy Points website. You can get free previews of the Trevor Lawrence and Rashad Bateman. And I believe there's a couple more that are put up there as well. So that's really cool. You've got the Fantasy Points staff mock, so you can see what these experts are doing in drafts. They apply and practice what they preach, and you can see it all in the draft guide. They've got 2022 top prospects, as well as Wes Huber's Devy rankings, which are a great resource for getting ahead of the curve and gaining that edge on your dynasty league mates. The best part about it, Ty, is they have wrapped this package all up in a pretty bow into an app for the 2021 season. So it is all optimized for mobile. If you're, out and about and you need to check on something, go there. If you're out and about and you want to get up to speed on some of those player profilers, do that. So really cool product. We encourage anybody who is listening right now to go check that out. But without further ado, Ty, I'm going to bring this man in. He's been waiting very, very patiently. And this is the guy who made this all happen. The guy's been working like a dog for the last few weeks. I can attest to that. And that would be Mr. Ben Cucanus, the Director of Operations over at Fantasy Points. Ben, how are you today?
I'm excellent. Got my first vaccine shot, so pushing through and hoping that side effects are a little mild. But I am great today. I'm happy. I'm so happy that we finally got this off the ground. And I hate compliments, and I suck at taking compliments, because for the last 8+ years now, I've been behind the scenes doing this kind of stuff. And now I'm like, oh, all right, I guess I might get in front of a camera sometime. But seriously, thank you guys for all the kind words about Fantasy Points and everything we're doing. But hey, please take some credit yourself. I mean, when we started talking earlier on, I wasn't trying to just bring, hey, how many Joe Schmoes can I, bring on as part of this group? So I'm so pumped with the group that we have right now.
Yeah, there wasn't like an international rule like in the NFL where you can take an extra podcast so long as they're not from the US. Like that wasn't something like that.
Yeah, there you go. But no, I'm doing great. I really am, guys.
That's awesome, behind every like major company and extremely successful group of teammates that are put together, there are members of that team who are doing everything behind the scenes. And even going back to Joe, like listening to Joe Dolan and Graham Barfield and those guys for years, even before Fantasy Points, they were always mentioning your name. And, it's not lost on the industry that there are people like you who exist and make it all possible for people like us just who get to chat about football.
I definitely, I have to give a shout out to all my fellow behind the scenes people that make things go. The people who the unrecognized, I call them the offensive linemen of the companies, because
they're like the nurses and teachers of the fantasy industry.
I like calling them the offensive linemen, because you notice if something messes up, you notice, just like when the left tackle misses a block, everyone notices. But when everything is operating, perfectly fine, you don't notice. But I like that. I like that part of the job.
Yeah, I think it's important for those guys to get their just due. We have a couple of those at True North with our man Dan made graphics, and Joe, and our buddy Paul, who's helping with our new site that we're building as well. So I take every chance that I can get to show my appreciation to them, as well as for yourself. So Ben, I wanted you to come on because I wanted to let you have the floor a little bit about how the Fantasy Points Media Group kind of came to be, and like what went into the idea, and then the building process, etc.
Sure. I suppose I can say it's something that has sort of been in my brain for a long time. One thing that I enjoy doing behind the scenes is I'll do the editing and a lot of organization work with our developer and all of that. But I think one of my favorite things is the multimedia and production aspect of it. And that's something that I've sort of just been teaching myself over the course of several years. And I sometimes feel, I sometimes feel that the media aspect needs of some smaller podcasts or smaller shows deserve more credit and deserve more exposure, because like take you guys for instance, this is not your full-time job, so there's a number of people who are working 40, 50, 60 hours a week and then spending 10 hours prepping to do 2 or 3 podcasts a week. And I sometimes sit here and damn, I'm lucky. I'm in a very lucky position to be able to do this full time. And so all over Twitter and social media, I see these little shows pop up and, video clips, and I'll tune in if something's on Periscope. And I sometimes would just think to myself, damn, these guys are having fun. They need a bigger platform. So that's part of what came. That's part of, I guess, what drove me to do that. And knowing that I have the capabilities and I guess the experience to sort of make something happen, was another part of that as well. But I would say probably the biggest, I guess, how things unfolded was we had, going back to Fantasy Guru days, we had been a part of several different hosting platforms. We were at part of Blog Talk Radio. I guess that was 6 years ago, beyond that. We were part of the Podcast One network. And then recently we were part of the Blue Wire podcast network, who are great guys. They are doing phenomenal stuff. Greg Olson's podcast is up on Tight End One. Great. I highly recommend listening to it. And we were part of Blue Wire, and for some reason, nothing really seemed to fit, because we wanted that middle ground of, okay, we want some more exposure, but we still sort of want to do our own thing. And we never really found that comfortable middle ground. So when we decided to go it our own, when we left Blue Wire, the idea just sort of popped in my head and saying, what if we've been doing this backwards the entire time? What if instead of us trying to find a bigger company to be a part of and to try and get more views, etc., what if the real solution or the better route is to be that umbrella and bring others on board? So shortly after we left, I started hunting around. The timing worked out perfectly because Graham had just been on your show like a couple of weeks prior, and I, asked him, I was like, hey, how are the guys at, True North? I'm thinking about doing this. And he had, the nicest things to say. So it's just sort of a mixture of, I love doing this kind of stuff. And I think there are a lot of deserving people who deserve some more visibility and some more credit, because it's not just about, the big boys in the fantasy industry. And to me, it almost made too much sense. Love being part of a group, love having affiliates and attachments, but didn't really find what we were looking for before. And I think, honestly, it's just because all this time we were doing it backwards. Instead of trying to be a puzzle piece that fit into a larger puzzle, try and more so be the puzzle box and bring in all the different pieces on our own. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. I can say for sure, as one of the many little podcasts that was out there, that this is definitely huge for us, and it's been incredible connecting with you and the team. And definitely want to say thanks to Graham Barfield for putting in a good word. It was great to have him on the show, and stay tuned because we will be having him back on the show again very soon, which is exciting. So thanks to him and thanks to you for all that work. And it's just I keep telling you, I hope I'm not becoming a pain in the ass in your DMs, because I've been picking your brain a lot lately and asking you how you operate. And I'm really excited to just kind of learn how some people who are so established in the industry operate. That's really cool from my end. And I know for Ty as well, as the two of us kind of manage the whole True North brand. So it's going to be really cool, man.
Just to roll that all together, like that's one of the big things. Like, I think it's interesting because I talked about this when we had Graham on, like I congratulated him for basically accomplishing the living the dream scenario, like being able to get yourself to a point where you could actually put a team together and do your own thing with fantasy points. And I think I always appreciate the stories of companies like that as well, who are building their brand on the back of talent and stuff. So it's always, I would imagine, a hard balance to strike, having to concentrate on content and all these dozens of team members that you have, and also trying to make sure that the media side of things is doing the job it does, because that's a saturated market in itself. That's even more saturated than the fantasy football market. But to put all this together, what I was saying is that I congratulated Graham. And, we talk about wanting to emulate some of the guys from Fantasy Points and their style and how they go about their business. And I've always tried to do that. I think that's a cheat code of life, right? You emulate what the most successful people do. You look at the most successful coaches in the NFL, and they just take what they found from Bill Walsh, what they found from Daddy Shanahan, whatever, and put it all together, and they make their best. So I just want to wrap this up by saying that, the reason I first landed on Fantasy Points, or why I was like, oh my God, how is not everybody subscribed to Fantasy Points, is listening to Dr. Abib Egbudoba, who won back-to-back Football Guys player championships this year and last year. That's like $500,000 purses. So this guy is, one of the best fantasy football players on the planet. He was on a completely different podcast, completely unsolicited, just happened to bring up that Fantasy Points was one of his best resources, while mentioning how important the offseason is and the process that we go through and the resources that we use and the people that you follow. So I think it just kind of rolls everything into one. Like, getting a Fantasy Point subscription is a cheat code, and me and Travis are so ultra lucky to be able to be in the same breath as some of those guys when it comes to Fantasy Points.
I appreciate that. And I had no idea he mentioned that he gave us a shout on a podcast. That's awesome.
100% of doctors recommend Fantasy Points.
That's I was trying to think of a joke. Or no, you could say like 4 out of 5 doctors recommend Fantasy Points, and the 5th got his social media taken away for being for losing that league or something like that. I don't know. But you mentioned the off season and how important the off season is. That's sort of why I wanted to launch this time, because I know the NFL draft is coming up, and I'm going to plug a show in a second that we're going to be doing tomorrow. But the unfortunate reality is we still have May, June, July. We still have 4 months before preseason football and 5 months before NFL regular season football. So for me, creating this network, which ultimately this mini TV station or this mini network of shows I want to use this off season to be like, are you missing football? Are you missing fantasy football? Go to Fantasy Points Media Group. Chances are you will find a very recent show that was likely produced within the last 12 hours to bide your time. So that's why I think the timing is great.
That's what basketball's for. These 4 months.
That is what basketball is for. We'll be doing, we'll be doing a lot of so our partnership is with NFFC High Stakes, and so I would say we already did one live stream draft, but once they really roll out those the draft champions and the cut line, the $100,000 prizes, we'll probably start doing live stream drafts. My guess is probably in a month we'll start doing that. Yeah, probably maybe
after the NFL draft. Yeah,
shortly after that. And it's great. We'll have one or two of our guys in the draft, and then we'll open the Zoom room to anyone else who wants to participate. We do hide names because there are some high rollers, big stakes guys that they don't want their strategies to be revealed. Speaking of basketball, we're going to be live streaming a whole bunch of those. Joe Dolan won like second place last year in one of those high stakes tournaments.
Yeah, on the I play on NFC too because Fanball and all that's rolled into it. Yeah, it's we love the guys at Fanball. Yeah, we might be doing another DFS contest with them, similar to what we did last year. Beat the Fantasy Points guys. But yeah, I wanted to plug one thing. So first of all, as Trav and Ty, they'll both reiterate, clear your calendars this Saturday starting at approximately 5 p.m. Clear your calendars. But before that, with the launch of the NFL NFL draft guide, we are going to be having basically a draft guide launch show tomorrow at 10 a.m. Eastern with Hansen and Cosell. Just going to be talking about what's in the guide. We have an app for it, which is amazing, both an iOS and an Android app. So as soon as this baby goes up tomorrow, shortly after that, hopefully tomorrow, but depending on the App Store processing, maybe you have to wait until Friday for it to appear. But there will be downloadable app for it. And so tomorrow at 10 a.m., just keep it on the lookout on the @FantasyPTS Live Twitter handle, because we'll be simulcasting it there. Just sort of John and Greg giving the rundown. We'll probably pull up some samples of what you can find in there, all of that kind of stuff. So that should be a really great show tomorrow.
Beautiful. And you mentioned it there, Ben. The Twitter handle @FantasyPointsLive, that's PTS for points, is going to be the hub spot for the entire media group. So anybody watching, feel free to, don't feel free, go and do it. Follow that account, check out everybody's work. There's going to be a lot of good content from the media group, as well as there's Fantasy Points content that's posted there all the time as well. So if you're following that account, you got the whole kit and caboodle, and you will be set to dominate the off season. So as just kind of a spin off of that, if you want to go check out that content, one thing that's really, really cool is that if you sign up using our promo code 21TrueNorth10 at fantasypoints.com, you get a 10% discount, and that True North is all caps. You can see it down in the ticker on the overlay there if you're watching. If you're listening, 21TrueNorth10 will get you 10% off. And they also have an early bird special right now going for 20% off of all subscriptions. And much like in Best Ball, Ty, you can stack that. So with our promo code, you can stack that 20% early bird with the 10% True North discount, and you get a whole 30% off of that bad boy. And the cool thing about that is you get 30% off, but even at full price, all of this content is totally it's not only is it reasonable, it's less than what you pay for similar products in the industry, quite a bit less. So I think this is going to be a key resource for a lot of people, and we're just thankful that we could be a part of it and help people out in getting that 10% discount in order to soak up all the goodness over at fantasypoints.com.
And to clarify that the 20% off on the early bird, that's already baked in. A few people have asked how do I get the early bird? It's already baked in. So when you use code 21TrueNorth10, you'll get the 10% off of what you see. So, for a premium subscription, full price normally $125. The 20% is already baked in for $100 right now. True North will take off an extra 10% off of that 100. So, yeah.
That's cash money. Yeah, under 100 bones, and you get all of that great work from all of those great people. So I think that's all I've got for now. We got a show coming up, Ty, tomorrow night, 7 p.m. Pacific time. I keep getting my Eastern and my Pacific times backed up because we got all this communication going.
I know.
But 7 p.m. Pacific, we will be on the TNFF network live. We'll talk a little bit more about the Fantasy Points Media Group because it'll be a one day post launch, and we're having our buddies Mike and Nate from the Dynasty Rewind show on. So we are stoked for that. Ben, I just want to say again, thank you so much. Cannot say enough how much we appreciate all of your work. Like I said, I've been in your DMs and I see all the stuff you're doing for that, and it goes without saying that you are a workhorse for that crew over there. And I know from Graham's conversation with us that they are very thankful for you, buddy.
I appreciate it. Thanks, guys, and yeah, thanks so much for having me on. Thanks for being a part of Media Group. It's the Media Group is only as strong as its weakest link, and we have no weak links. There it is.
Absolutely not. Ty, you got any parting shots here, my man?
No, just go up, sign up for Fantasy Points. Look at what they're doing. They're adding and building onto their repertoire here, whereas every other fantasy industry seems to be bleeding talent for the last decade here. So I can't be more proud of where we've come from and where we are now, Trav. And it's all thanks to you and Ben and Graham Barfield and people like that. So we won't soon forget y'all for sure.
Absolutely. So thanks to anybody who tuned in. Really appreciate it. We know it was kind of an impromptu session, but we were able to pull it together.
Those are the best. Those are the best.
Yeah.
You want to get on the show? You want to get on? Yeah.
Totally, man. It's great. No prep. You just go in winging it, and it makes for a really, really good conversation. So thanks for making time in your busy schedule there, Ben. Like I said, show tonight at 7 p.m. Pacific. Hope to see you guys there. We actually we got a new podcast account at TNFF Pod. So make sure you go follow that as well for all the updates. Until tomorrow night, talk to everybody then. Peace.